Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Restore Lab podcast. I have an exciting guest today. We have Christina McClurken. Hi, Christina.
Hello, how are you?
Thanks for being here. This is an exciting topic for me, one, because you and I both have a lot of similarities, and it's really nice to, find someone with a lot of commonalities, and we've kind of gone down different paths to end up kind of in a similar space.
Yes.
So I'm excited to talk today. We're talking about metabolic health in a different way than a lot of conventional people talk about metabolic health.
Yes.
I think metabolic health is an umbrella term, and we're going to talk about weight loss, gut health, all of the mechanisms surrounding that. So we're talking all things metabolic health today from a functional medicine lens, because this is a functional nutrition podcast. And Christina is a functional nutritionist. She's the owner of Christina McClurken Wellness, and you work mostly with women, an online platform.
Yes.
For functional nutrition, and you are incredible.
Thank you.
When we were connected just about a year ago, I think it was Molly
It was
Conway.
Molly. Yes. Thank you, Molly.
Thank
Shout
you,
out to
Molly. Yes, because you are also a physical therapist turned functional nutritionist, and that is not the most common thing. So it was great that I could find somebody in the area to connect with, and it's been off to the races ever since.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for this conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Yeah, we've talked a lot off camera about so many things, and I figured we may as well bring you on and just do some deep dive, because I think there's a lot of, as we know, the diet industry, the wellness industry has so much misinformation, and that's actually really what I want to be doing on this podcast. And my vision is bringing functional medicine to the average population, basically.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's going to be such a great conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely timely. I mean, there's a lot going on right now in the wellness space when we talk about metabolic health and metabolism and weight. I've had a GLP-1 conversation before, and that's not really what we're talking about today, which is kind of cool. I always like to dive into kind of how you got to where you are today, because I think that's helpful to give context.
Yes.
I got here through, we often get into functional medicine through either our own journey or loved ones or things like that. With my story being partially, I had my jaw wired shut, and so I had a lot of issues following that. And then also somebody close to me having a lot of pain and issues that really weren't uncovered until there was diet stuff involved, and a focus on gut healing and things like that. So will you share a little bit about your story and or your loved one's story that kind of got you into the space that you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. There is so many layers to this, both for myself and my loved ones. So it might take a hot minute, but
that's fine.
So we'll go
love
way
it.
back. Yeah. So I am a child I was born in 1980, right? So grew up in the 80s and 90s. And clearly, that was the height of diet culture. I feel like that was the low fat craze. Everything came Snackwells, this and that. And I was a teenager at the time, so I was not actively dieting. I was an athlete in high school, but I was definitely observing dieting in my household. My mother, no fault of her own. I always like to say that because she does listen to the content I put out, and I always want to say it's no fault of her own.
It isn't.
It's not, right? So she was doing what she thought was correct. I remember her doing Weight Watchers, and I'm dating myself here, but there was a cardboard slider where you'd line up the protein and the calories and the fiber, and you get your number of points, and it was on a cardboard slide.
Okay.
Crazy. Yeah. So I just observed layers of dieting with that. We did have all the low fat stuff in the house. She would make us dinner and sit at the table with us, but not eat it. And we would ask why. And she'd say, I had a Snickers bar for lunch. I was bad. And then so I learned okay, you eat sweets or you're bad, you restrict. Again, I didn't even know I was observing it at the time.
Yep.
But I was. And then I went to school. I went to college. For physical therapy, which, we do stem from my own knee injury in high school is what sent me that route.
Yeah.
And I gained the freshman 15 in about the first 15 minutes. I mean, I was eating and drinking with no abandon. And so I gained quite a bit of weight. I'm 5'2", so it didn't take much. So I was not very healthy while I was in school studying for healthcare. But it really wasn't until I graduated and I started working in an acute rehab. So I was working with people with spinal cord injuries, heart attacks, hip replacements, knee replacements, post-stroke. I really loved inpatient, but I started to notice a couple of things. And one of those was I saw all of my patients taking cups of pills, like as second breakfasts, I always said. And it was like their past medical histories were every 3-letter abbreviated lifestyle-related disease. So type 2 diabetes, high blood, hypertension, heart disease, like just everything. And I was like, wow, I was 24 years old. I was like, I don't want this to be me. That, and I very distinctly remember one of my patients, and she was a woman who inhabited a larger body, and she had a stroke, and I was trying to teach her how to slide board across from her wheelchair to a mat, I believe, in preparation to try to get into a car with a family member to be able to go out. And she couldn't move her body. She had hemiparesis, and she couldn't move. And I just remember her sitting on the mat and crying and saying, gosh, Christina, like, I only wish we knew to take care of ourselves as much as you guys do now. And it really hit me because she couldn't go back, right? And here I was at 20 something, and I was like, I never want this to be me. I never want to have a health condition when I get older that I could have prevented, that I would sit there saying, I wish I had done X, Y, or Z different. So I decided that it was time for me to get healthy because I was not eating healthy. I was not exercising. But because of the generation that I grew up in, that to me meant eat less, exercise more. Kate Moss was the goal. It was just toxic time.
Yeah, the skinny paradigm.
Yeah, skinny paradigm. So to me, that's all I knew. So it was, my motive wasn't get unhealthily skinny, but all I knew was I should eat less and exercise more. So, downloaded my FitnessPal, told me to eat like 1,000 calories a day. And I was like, well, if I work out, I can earn some more.
Yep.
So I started eating very little and, hitting the gym, but of course for the treadmill or the elliptical, no weights to be found, just to burn as many calories as I could.
Yep.
And that was really the start of my metabolic dysfunction. And I didn't know it at the time, but I ended up dieting my way down from probably 150 pounds to maybe 120, which was, for my height, still a healthy weight. But I did it in such a restrictive way that I ended up, first of all, I ended up binge eating at night because I was starving from the day. But I lost my period and I ended up with hypothyroid. And not once did any doctor say to me, like, I wonder why this could be, right? So they had just put me on some birth control and some thyroid medicine, and I didn't know any better at all.
No, because you're not really given options. You're not given education or like asking why are these happening. It's as these come up, okay, let's throw this at it.
Yeah, and that's very much the Western medicine lens, right? It's like, okay, you have this condition, here's a pill for it.
Yep.
And so when I ended up getting married and we went to have children, I couldn't have kids. I had no cycle. I couldn't get pregnant, and I ended up going for fertility. So, which cost our family probably at least $15,000 between, we have the blessing of 3 kids.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It is, but I often say, like, dieting cost me a lot of memories. It cost me a lot of my health. It almost cost me a family. But again, like, so interesting. I remember the fertility doctor saying, gosh, you have hypothalamic amenorrhea. It's kind of like this supermodel, super athlete kind of like low body fat percentage disease, but you don't have that. But again, nobody asked me, like, did you restrict your eating? Did you over-exercise? Like, none of those things. Right. And if I had known, I feel like I could have completely changed the trajectory of my health in my 20s,
Yeah, it was like this subclinical thing where if it's not diagnosable or it's not observable, then no one's really looking behind the scenes.
Right. And, I know we'll talk more about kind of my perception of what metabolism is, but, those are major stressors, right? You cannot, eat 1,000 calories a day and go burn 500 on the elliptical as a, active young woman and expect to have a healthy, thriving cycle. But again, it strikes me so much in retrospect that nobody even asked. And here was this like 20-something-year-old girl with these kind of, diagnoses that just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish I had a functional practitioner back then to like make it make sense for me and really change the behaviors that were driving the dysfunction.
And functional medicine is like the medicine of why, right? Like, okay, these things start to pop up. It's like, why is this happening, right? And so it's digging back the layers.
Yeah.
I will say thank you so much for sharing that because that's quite a trajectory and really not unfamiliar. I would say that's more common than not, quite frankly. And I also had, my own story too, where similarly, like I grew up in the 90s and it was the same thing. Like we got rid of fat and then we replaced everything with carbs and we were scared of fat and things like that. I similarly went to college for PT school and I think I gained 15 pounds in 2 years, like maybe my freshman and my sophomore years. And then when I went to move off campus to cook for myself, I was like, okay, buy as little amount of groceries as possible, spend as little money as possible. That's when I became vegetarian, right? So I didn't know enough about nutrition to be like, how am I eating a healthy vegetarian diet?
Right.
And then so I started to lose weight just like almost unknowingly restricting actually. Yes. And then it became this like, oh, this is working for me kind of thing. And then kind of getting addicted to that.
Yes.
And so it was interesting. And so then, after my jaw surgery, having my jaw wired shut, a bunch of digestive stuff. But same thing, I went to work in a subacute rehab facility, and I actually thought I was healthy then. Like I was a vegetarian, I was eating salads a day. I had my apple every single day, my banana every single day. Like I was eating all the same foods every single day for like years. Yeah, and also that's not the picture of health either necessarily. And then it was having like major digestive stuff, and I think malabsorption essentially. Of course. You know, I almost think I think I had a fructose malabsorption.
Yeah, and malnutrition. I mean, really, like that's when we're eliminating food groups, regardless of how healthy you're eating, of the stuff you are eating, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that diversity. And so interesting because I also spent, fast forward about 5 to 6 years of my life vegan. And that was around, when my sister was actually diagnosed with cancer. She got diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which again is like a secondary layer to the story as to what I observed is that she had a very, very, very high stress situation with her marriage that's now broken up. But, that's where I really learned that like disease and high stress for over a long period of time can lead to, like literally I say her stress caused her cancer, not once, but twice. And that was something that was very apparent. But again, during that time, we did a lot of reading about vegan diets and how that can be helpful. So we both were vegan and I felt great for like a first couple of years. And then it's like all of a sudden I felt awful. I'm like, what is going on? Again, in retrospect, you live and you learn. I realized I had all sorts of micronutrient deficiencies, even though I was eating healthfully. It was not, and when you eliminate even things like meats with really great nutrition, it's just
the B12, the iron,
zinc, and I mean all of those things. Vitamin A. I think I was definitely swayed by that there was that next wave of trendy, right? Like Netflix series on veganisms and all that kind of stuff where again, it just became this thing that, I always thought I was doing the right thing by my health, and it's not until like retrospect that you're like, no, that wasn't right either.
No, that's exactly it. Similarly, it was the Netflix documentary Forks Over Knives that made me go vegetarian, right? So I was like, I'm doing this because the meat in our country is so unhealthy, the factory farm meat, and a lot of it is, but good quality meat has a ton of nutrients in it. And that was the same thing where I was like, oh, I'll just cut that out because that's unhealthy. Right. And then again, you think you're doing the right thing. But it was a lot of things that I did was just from a place of ignorance. And it was from like, I went vegetarian and didn't supplement the B12 and didn't supplement iron. And then the energy is gone and you wonder why. Like I was taking naps every single day. I was barely making it through the workday.
Oh gosh.
And I always say how like, I think it's crazy how many things we normalize. And that's kind of what we're highlighting here is all the things that we experienced are normalized, but they're not normal.
Correct. They're common, but they're not normal.
Yeah. And so now luckily, like you and I kept digging into the science of why, and luckily we both turned our own health around. Yes. And have a ton of energy, have stable metabolisms, all those sorts of things. But it was through doing our own research and going back into studying functional medicine and really learning. So we want to get that information out to other people. And so I think let's dig into the world of metabolism a little bit more, because I think a lot of people equate metabolism to weight. Like, what is my metabolism like? My metabolism is slow. Yes. And I think people don't even know what that really means, right? Like a lot of times I like zoom out and talk about metabolic health. And I think that's such a cornerstone of health. But like if we talk, broad spectrum metabolic health or even, moving into the disease aspect of it, it's looking at your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your triglycerides, waist circumference. Weight is a piece of the puzzle. And I say it's not always the whole piece of the puzzle, right? And there's different aspects to weight. That's like a whole part of the conversation too of lean body mass versus fat mass and all those sorts of things. Let's talk a little bit more about in the functional medicine world, like what does metabolism mean to you?
Yeah. I like to break it down super simple. And what I say is your metabolism, it's not a calculator. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I know we're going to talk about that. It's actually a stress and energy manager. And your metabolism is constantly scanning your environment for two things, like are you in fear of famine, right? Or is it safe enough to reproduce, like as a woman? So the majority of the world will try to convince you, right, that it is a calculator. It's calories in and calories out, and that's all that matters for your weight, which it's absolutely not. I like to describe it more like a thermostat, right? So a thermostat is actually responsive and reactive to the environment that it's in. So let's just say, right, we're in upstate New York, it's April 2nd and it's freezing. So let's just say our house is set at 70 degrees, right? And that's the homeostasis. That's what your body always is looking to achieve, is homeostasis, right? That like happy point where things are balanced. If the heat was on too high, too long, and it got to 72 or 73, that would be a stressor on the environment, and the thermostat would react. It would kick off. It would turn off the heat to bring you back to that home base, right? If it was off for too long and it got too cold, it's 67 degrees, right? Like that's a stressor. It's going to kick on to bring you back to that happy place. And that's very much how your metabolism works. It's constantly assessing how much like stress are you under in your environment. And then energy, that really is the calorie part of the equation, because calories is a unit of energy, right? Are we bringing in enough energy for our energy requirements, like what we have to put out? And so that
your body needs
your body needs, right.
Like just to exist, needs a fair amount of calories throughout the day just to simply exist, let alone activity level on top of that.
Right. And it's nothing that your Apple Watch is ever going to tell you. And I think that's very uncommon, is that people are, and even when you're trying to do a traditional like macro like calculator or something, like nothing is ever going to know exactly what your body needs, right? Because when we talk about the energy side of the equation, energy is required for every cellular function in your body, right? So it's required for literally everything. It's not just the energy you need to like go to the gym or like do your workout or even exist, right? It's all that stuff that's happening while you're sleeping.
Running all the biochemical pathways, like detox literally pathways, cleansing, everything.
Right. So if you're not taking enough energy, calories in, like your body's not going to prioritize things like good digestion, good immunity, your cycle, as in my case, right? Like making hormones. Like we need raw materials to make hormones. And so like a lot of everything that's trendy right now is a topic of hormones and this and that. But like even to me, hormones are never the root cause. It all comes down to your metabolism, right? They're responding to something, or we don't even have enough, like I said, raw material to make them. So
because then like if we don't have enough energy coming in, basically the body's like, okay, goes into survival mode, and it uses whatever is coming in to run the basic functions. But then it's like, okay, that's the whole fertility piece of like, okay, that doesn't have to happen, so therefore that's off the table.
Yeah, like if we're not taking enough energy in, is it your body scanning your environment, saying, do we have enough to like support a child? And if you don't have enough coming in for your basic functions, you certainly don't have enough. So it's like, shut it down, right? We'll just like shut the system down. And, similarly, we can talk about that, probably a whole other conversation on the level of female, as you're going through perimenopause and as you're aging as well. But we have to think about your body's always trying to prioritize what's necessary for survival. So it's going to prioritize like producing cortisol over estrogen and progesterone, right? So it's like your body is always very, very smart. It's working in your favor all of the time. And I think that is another kind of misconception this day and age, is we pathologize every symptom when really the symptom is your body's way of communicating to you. It's just that we've been taught to completely override it, right? Or then we're blaming our body for not doing what it should or having these symptoms, when really like those symptoms, you should thank your body for it. Like I wish, again, if I knew, I would have thanked my body for showing me like, oh, you stopped my cycle. Here's a problem. I didn't know. And I was not taught at that time,
Yeah, I love that, because our bodies are always talking to us. We're essentially taught not to listen to it. I always say that, like, pain is your body telling you something. Let's listen to it. For years decades, we've been taught not to listen to our bodies, and anything that comes up, it's like, oh, can't deal with that, ignore, but then it's going to start screaming.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like your body will always, and the other thing I like to say, it is going to keep speaking louder and louder until you listen. And your body also always keeps the score. Like I think that's a Louise Hay. Is it Louise Hay? I can't remember who book, but book. But it's kind of like when symptoms are coming up, and especially we'll talk as my gut stuff is advanced. Like it's not just because I ate something yesterday, right? This is 20 years of information my cells have been having memory of that are going to tip the scale in a certain way, not the actual scale, but I'm saying, like, proverbial, towards dysfunction, because all of those things are catching up, right?
I like that point to hit on too, of that it's not just, you had cake once, or
Right.
so it's not like the
Right.
things that you do occasionally,
Yeah.
because that's where we talk about balanced diet and things like that. Like there is room for everything. It's just how often, it's the
Yeah.
majority of time and things like that.
Yeah, and I really truly like to look at the metabolism. I talk about it being the stress and energy manner. To me, we have to look at the entire like stress ecosystem that a person has, because we all have it. And I like to bucket stress into like 4 categories. So we have glycemic stress, and yeah, that can be imbalanced blood sugar, it can be overeating, it can be over exercising, it can be all of those sort of things.
Yeah.
We have, poor food quality, processed food. We have, so glycemic stress, we have circadian stress. So if you're underslept chronically, or if you have like, light, dark issues, meaning maybe even shift workers, things like that. We have inflammatory stress, and that can be the things like, toxic load, gut dysbiosis. It could be chronic injury, illness, food sensitivities. It can be, again, over-exercising and not really recovering. So and then we have what most of us think of as stress is more of the perceived mental, emotional stress, like you're stuck in traffic, you've got a work deadline, your kids are, driving you crazy, but also the things that so many people don't think about, which is you lack of boundaries, saying yes when you really want to say no, people pleasing, negative self-talk, social media consumption. And those things are stressors that are impacting your metabolism. It's not just what you consume food-wise, right? It's also what you're consuming visually, conversations, emotionally. And I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle that people are not even, like, again, they're just thinking it's about what they eat and how they move their body. And it's so many layers deep.
So many layers. And that's where, people, if it was just calories in, calories out, people would do the macros and they would lose weight.
Anyone with a calculator would be at their ideal weight.
Right.
I always say that. Yeah.
And that's just not the case for people. So that's a huge point to highlight. You're basically kind of went over the nodes of functional medicine, and that's what I like to delve into. If you're not sleeping well, then that also impacts like your eating habits as well, things like that. Also your energy levels to be able to, if there is going to be any movement, like you'll have no energy for movement, things like that. And then definitely all of those other pieces of, we even talk about like connection and relationships and things like that. So that's where that whole, permeability in terms of boundaries and things like that. I think that's huge. Do you want to touch on that anymore? Because I feel like we don't talk about that enough in terms of the, well, you know what? Let's put a button on that, because we'll dig back into it with the gut related stuff. So I love that we're looking at this as a multi-dimensional picture, because that's what health is, right? And again, that's where I think it can almost be empowering, because it's not just about food necessarily. It is about all these other things. And I also think then people can be like, well, that's stressful. Now I have to look at my sleep, and I have to look at my mobility or my movement and all these other things. But I think it can almost be empowering, because it's like, well, if this isn't, great, then like, what if you're doing pretty well in 3 areas, then you're doing pretty well, you know?
And that's kind of what we were just talking about, even with food, almost like the dose makes the poison, right? Where it's the same thing with stress. Stress is not a negative thing. Like we all need, stress is what makes us more resilient. It makes us stronger. And so we're talking, it's very different to talk about acute stress, like versus chronic, prolonged, elevated, escalated stress, right? And I think that's it. So I always say, when you're kind of like, I kind of like to give the visual of like a balance scale, right? And it's like, so we just don't want the scale tipping where there's so many stressors that are not outweighed by relief of those stressors. Right? And so it can feel overwhelming. The whole goal is not for us to sit and like meditate and kumbaya 24 hours a day. Like that's not realistic, and that wouldn't be healthy either, right? We wouldn't be resilient. But exactly like you said, when you actually look at your kind of like stress ecosystem, it's like, where are the unnecessary added stressors? Where is this stress becoming chronically present versus a short-term kind of thing that then makes us stronger because we get over that, right? And so I think that's really it. It's like we have to separate that conversation, from acute versus chronic versus like what's the total, like when I'm with my clients, I always look at what's the total stress load on the person, because particularly when it does come to weight loss, right? Yes, I'm not ignoring you have to eat in a calorie deficit, but that's also a stressor on your body. And so if everything else, if you're sleeping well, if you're recovered from your exercise, if you've got good food and balance, you can tolerate that. Whereas somebody else coming in that might have either be underslept or also have a shit ton of stress in their life, like maybe they're going through a divorce or a family member sick, like that might not be the best time, right? That's not necessarily the best time. So I think in this day and age, so I know everybody wants to, you're ready to lose weight. Up here, you're ready. But we have to look at, again, is your body ready for that?
Oh, I love that. I talk about the body being so resilient. I love that you said that, because that's what I say all the time. I'm like, inherently, our bodies are so resilient.
Yeah.
It is doing things right now that we don't even know. Like, there's a lot that we know that it's doing, which is so cool. And there's so much behind the scenes that we don't even know, that we don't give it credit for. And I think that, again, we have the inputs coming in to let it do its thing. Let's bring in the stuff that's going to help it do its thing.
Correct.
And then it will.
Yes.
And then, like, we're taking, instead of like forcing your way there, it's like, it's naturally going to happen because that's what it naturally does.
Yeah.
And the whole acute versus chronic is really the name of the game, right? I always say that too. The dose makes the poison, where it's like acute inflammation, we need that.
Yes.
And then that will stimulate healing.
Yes.
And then chronic inflammation over time, there's the tipping of the scale.
Correct.
And that's what it is. And that's where, in functional medicine and functional nutrition, we will look back at that history of like, okay, well, what did you do in your teens?
Yes.
And they go back even to like, were you bottle fed, or were you C-section, or,
or
vaginal delivery?
Yep.
So there's so many aspects to so many layers too, but like, you're right. When it comes down to it, we have to look at, does the body feel safe enough to do what it can do? And if not, then what are the factors? And I like that you went into the calorie deficit piece. That is a stress on the body, right?
Yeah.
And there are beneficial stressors on the body. Like exercise is a stress on the body.
Correct.
It can be a beneficial stress, but when overdone,
Correct.
it is too much of a stress,
Correct.
right? And when underdone, well, you need a little bit of that beneficial stress. So we're always like, that word homeostasis, and balance is really what the body, you're right. It's always trying to come back into it. And so the best thing we can do for ourselves is to give it enough of what it needs and not too much, because too much of a good thing is too much.
Yeah. I always say we have to find the Goldilocks zone, right? Like, not too little, not too much, but just right. And that's what you're looking for. And also, I think one of the common misconceptions, especially in the weight loss space, is that like, people are just trying to lose weight forever and ever and ever. Amen. Right? Like, it's just like, I'm always trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
And it's
like, also you're used to it.
Right. And it's like, that really can't be. That's not what our bodies are made for, right? Like, when you think back even to our ancestors, right? Things did go in seasons. Like, food was plentiful in spring and summer and when harvests were. And then but that's when we make sure we store it up, because we would have a little bit less in the winter. And so we have to think of it like that it's, we can apply
cyclical.
Short amount of stresses for time, but nutrition has to be phased, right? It has to be cyclical. And we have to we can't constantly be coming from a place of depletion, right? So this is where I see a lot of women, and this was including myself, right, who are chronically underfed for years, if not decades, and they just want to lose weight. And it's like, well, we actually have to get you to the point where your body has that signal, like, it's okay to lose weight. So we actually have to build you up and eat more first, so that then your body can handle that stress. And then we apply the stressor of the deficit, right? But in a short period of time, and there's an exit strategy. It's not, we're just going to eat this way forever. And I think that's where a lot of women are misguided, is that it then just becomes a forever and ever thing. And they wonder why they're struggling when they're always trying to lose weight. You're struggling because you're always trying to lose weight, and you never came out of that. Yeah.
Let's look at what has worked and what hasn't worked, right? Okay, if your body is an experiment, if it's not working, then don't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. That's the definition of insanity. They understand that it is scary for people who are so used to like restrict, because that's what we heard, that's what we learned, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I can say from my own experience, I was in a total depletion state after, again, restricting and then jaw surgery and like malabsorption and all of these things, where I was down to a low weight and I had to gain weight. And I was like, I'm feeling so not good that I do want this anyway. It was crazy how many calories I was eating, and I was like, I have energy now. Yeah. And it's like, oh, this is actually fueling me. And like you said, it's not like you're going to go get ho-hos and a Big Mac. It's the quality of
and
calories.
That's what I was going to say. To me, this is a mistake that I made for a while, because when I had recognized that I was kind of stuck in that like restrictive mindset from the way I was brought up, and I had to increase, there were so many times I tried it, and whenever I increased, of course, because my blood sugar was dysregulated, I had restricted for so long that I was going for foods that I just like were off limits for so long, right? And so I would start gaining weight, not in a real healthy way, and then I would be like, oh, alert, right? Like, my pants are tight, restrict. So this is something that I say, it's not just plain old eat more, right? There's actually, and this is something I carry all of my clients through, like an actual strategic and systematic way that we do it, and also with certain foods, because and exercise, right? Because as you're starting to eat more, we want to drive that increased caloric intake towards building lean muscle tissue, right? So we have to be applying that stress of working out, but then we also have to recover. And you'll notice, people think they have no motivation to work out, but it's because they're really malnourished or they don't have the resources. So once we get that, there's all sorts of other positive side effects like more energy. You take more steps naturally. We can work out and build more muscle tissue. You just have energy to I remember I used to pass out on the couch and my kids would have to wake me up for me to put them to bed, right?
Yeah.
And it's you can actually stay awake and watch a movie with your kids or go to the park and play and do things that you've been missing doing. And it wasn't a motivation problem after all. So there is a lot of things, but again, it's not just, hey, go eat more of whatever. There's a strategic process that we want to do when we're doing that.
Yeah. When I talk about metabolic health with a lot of my clients, because I do a lot with the blood sugar stuff, and maybe the PT in me too, is muscle and lean body mass is what's so metabolically, it's like our metabolic engine basically, and it's so protective, and that's where we can use that protein coming in and calories to fuel the building of the lean body mass. It's really not about the weight on the scale, it's about how do you feel. At the end of the day, it's can you do what you want to do and feel the way that you want to feel, and the side effect will be weight loss if it needs to be weight loss, or if it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
But the body recomp when you're building lean body mass is you feel so good that it's not about the number,
Yeah, and this is where a lot of mindset work comes in, and that's why I've walked this path, so I feel like I am very good at supporting my clients through that, because there is a lot of mental chatter that comes in, and I do want to also say I think that there's sometimes this misconception in the functional space or mismessaging that it's you should just want to be healthy, and if you have weight loss goals or aesthetic goals that it's vanity, and I absolutely do not agree with that, because we all know when we look good and feel good in our own skin, we show up differently. We show up better at work, we maybe speak more confidently, we have better relationships. So aesthetic goals to me are part of health, because health is not just physical, it's mental and emotional as well. What we want to make sure is that we're going about it in a healthy way. Like you said, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to recomposition your body. And sometimes it happens more naturally, but sometimes it does take a little bit more strategy, right? And that's kind of where I come in, and to do it in a way that we're also addressing the mindset stuff that comes up along the way, because it does and it will. But for people who are trying to build lean muscle and recomposition their body, it's not the number on the scale is one tool, and it might not be the most accurate of your progress, right? Because your scale could be going up, but if your measurements are coming down, your clothes are fitting better, that shows you're recompositioning your body. So we have to always remember that the weight is not fat. Right. All of everything in your body composes of your weight. So yes, your muscle tissue, yes, your fat tissue, but also your bones, your organs, the water you're carrying. So that is a really important thing for people to realize too, is that the number doesn't indicate exactly what's going on.
Yeah, not at all. And that's where I like that the bioelectrical impedance scales can show you the breakdown, because I think that can be helpful. But I honestly don't even encourage people to weigh themselves at all. I'm just let's go how you feel and how your clothes are fitting. And then if we need to, we could go deeper. But you're absolutely right that I think, again, it's it's nice to say just go for health, everyone go for health. But how are we getting to health?
Yeah.
We're all humans and we all have wants. And I don't think it's not bad to want to lose weight. And maybe some people need to, but again, can it be that beneficial side effect? What you touched on, let's go down that road of the mindset, right? Because I think sometimes if the only goal is for a purely observational, I look good goal, then it's not coming from a place of loving your body, changing the mindset, flipping the switch and the script of I'm doing this because I love my body and I want to feel good and look good. You will do so many more supportive, restorative things for yourself. And it really does come down to that mindset.
Yeah. Everything. And that's why I always say it's not, everything is neutral. Even the number on the scale is neutral. The number literally has no meaning to it except for what we give it. And so everything is the energy that you're putting behind it and the mindset you're looking at it with. So in fact, I actually do have most of my clients, I think it can be individual way themselves, because I actually want to teach them. That's how we kind of detach that emotion from the scale, right? Because if you're stepping on once a month and then you'd be like, oh crap, right? And it's you're still giving that scale power. So to me, I will oftentimes have my clients weigh every day and know that this is just one of 7, every week. And we're looking at your averages, because because it is normal for your scale to fluctuate. You know, diet wants you to say it's going to go down, down, down every day. That's not it. And if we're building muscle, like to me, it's a tool to learn your body's feedback. Oh, it went up. Well, you went out to eat. There was more sodium. Like, let's just actually learn that this is normal and not actually like pathologize a number. But again, that's hard when the energy that you're giving to that number. So that's where we have to actually retrain. And I do think, like I said, it is okay to want to me, it's like we have to bring weight loss and health gain together. Like, they're not two separate things. So it's totally okay to go about physical aesthetic goals, health first, right? Like, we just have to like actually always be mindful of the health, because you could be like, when I was lower weight that I wanted to be in my 20s, I had no energy. My eyelashes were falling out, right? I was hungry all the time. I was cranky. I missed out on memories. Like, I was, I had anxiety if someone was preparing my food. I was like logging things under a table out to eat. Like, that's not healthy, even though my body weight was healthy. So we actually really have to look at quality of life, with that.
And to tack on to that, I think it is helpful to hear other people's story. Similarly, like again, with that restriction phase, my hair was thinning, and same thing. I didn't have the energy to be doing anything, and I was more in the I was so fixated on having quality things that I wouldn't eat out or I wouldn't do anything. And
orthorexia, right? It's only perfect foods,
exactly. So I was only eating foods that I knew were like really healthy and things like that, and getting anxiety when going out to eat. Even though now I'm like, okay, that is the other aspect of health where I'm in community with other people and I'm not even looking up the menu beforehand because that one meal, it doesn't matter. And if it's cooked in seed oils, that one meal, it's to take away the stress of that, I think is way bigger than any of the small things, right? And so it's really about recognizing that.
It does. And that falls under, I talked about those 4 categories of stress. That falls under the mental, emotional stress if you're constantly obsessing about food. And I think with social media, that does become a thing right now. Oh, does it have a seed oil? I can't have a Diet Coke. And it's like, that is more stressful than the seed oil. Like that stress of you obsessing over the ingredients and not letting yourself enjoy something and missing the community and the connection, that stress will actually negatively impact your metabolism more than the small dose of the seed oil or on your French fries or the aspartame in your Diet Coke. Like, I love me a good diet soda, right? Like, no big whoop. I don't stress that. I used to be like you, like if it wasn't clean or if it wasn't perfect. But that stress enough, your body feels that, right? Your body feels that that's a perceived stress that is like underlying and your body, that's a threat, right? That constant worry is a threat.
And I mean that, like, we could just end there because I think that opens a whole nother can of worms because that, I think, is what people don't recognize or they don't realize how stressed they are about it. One quote that I like that Talia Pollock said before, she's in New York and she had a plant-based cookbook, but she said that you can't eat kale with a bitch face. Yeah, because if you're eating the kale and you're hating the kale and you're like, I'm eating kale, here it is, and you hate it with every inch of your being, it's not doing anything good for you, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's also not going to help your eating decisions. I always say this, like when I was following programs that had lists of like approved or good foods and not good foods, and I would just eat quinoa because it was like this good food. I freaking hate quinoa. Like, it tastes like air. I feel like it's like nothing. And if I were to eat a bowl of it, I would end up like literally digging for chocolate after because I wasn't satisfied. So I was like, we always have to think about with our nutrition too, what is the satisfaction factor? If you eliminate all like the butters and the sauces and the oils and that, like, and you're ended up like, you could eat like the cleanest like plain grilled chicken salad with like balsamic vinegar, and then what? Then you're ending up going for X, Y, or Z later. So we have to look at food as satisfying as well. It's not, I'm not like the food is just fuel kind of thing. I mean, I'm Italian. We grew up, it's emotional, it's connection, it's love. And we need to allow it to be all of those things and not demonize like any part of it because that's not going to serve anybody's.
No, and we have to live in this world with other people, have relationships with other people, enjoy ourselves. And so that just doesn't work. You know, it's way too black and white to think about it like that. And I think I've thought that for a period of time, and then again you try that and you're like, that does not work, and then you learn a lot more, and then you're so glad that you're like, oh my gosh, I felt so bad. Like, you never realize how bad you felt until you feel better. And that is like so the case with my story, so the case with your story. And the stress piece is huge. I think let's delve into that because stress, I think we can talk about it from the cortisol standpoint. We can talk about it from the gut health standpoint. But let's dig into that next layer of, so we have metabolism, we have like, how is the metabolism working? But from the functional medicine side of things, I can't get through a conversation without talking about gut health.
Yeah, and that's kind of like the next layer of my story too, because that's when my gut. First of all, I was on hormonal birth control forever, which obviously we know, lots of problems there. But my gut health really went downhill when it was actually, shortly after. Well, my sisters, we had about 5 years of really difficult time with her illness. She got diagnosed, she got re-diagnosed, she had a bone marrow transplant, so she was immunocompromised for a while. And then in 2020, of course, COVID hit. My dad actually got diagnosed with cancer as well. And then in 2023, we lost him. And it was really after that all of my gut stuff started. I had my first GI map, my functional stool test. And even the practitioner I was working with at the time, she's like, I can't even believe this is yours, because she knew I was like a health nut. I mean, I had like E. coli, I had H. pylori, I had parasites, I had such dysbiosis. It was like unbelievable. And this is from somebody who was eating healthy and exercising, right? So it was a very clear and apparent correlation with stress, because my stress was so heightened. I was, working full time actually for Blue Cross Blue Shield as a telephonic health coach. My 3 kids were, at the time, 2023. So they were, oh my goodness, when were my kids born? 11, 12, and I have twins that are 9. In sports, it was my dad passed in September. We were in the hospital with the entire month of September, August into September. My kids were back to school. All of their birthdays are in September. Like sports, it was an insane time. And I was just
talk about stress,
surviving. Right. Like, I mean, I was handling what I could handle. I took a leave from work to be able to help support my dad. And he passed, and you think you process, but like life goes on. Obviously, we were in the middle of the busiest season of our life,
right.
And it was shortly after that all of a sudden I started with extreme bloating, right? Just like feeling awful. I was actually working. I had some body composition goals myself. I started working with a macronutrient coach because I wasn't someone who'd ever done that, and as we started adding food, I was literally like blowing. I'm like, this is not a normal response. And that kind of dove me further into the gut health realm.
Yep.
To realize what's going on. And then subsequently I had, cyclical issues with H. pylori and SIBO. But it was literally all like, and this is what I always ask my clients, because I think it comes out of nowhere. Like, what was happening in your life at that time? Right. Exactly. And there's always with gut health issues or any issues, there's always like a stressful event.
Yep.
Because the gut is not this isolated thing in our body, right? It is part of our, I'm going to use the word ecosystem again, right? It's directly connected with the brain, with your thyroid, with your liver, just everything, your immunity. And so it's part of a system that, just like that thermostat, right, is reacting and responding to the environment. So we always have to ask when someone's popping up with gut health issues, like, what is the environment? Why is the environment susceptible to bacterial overgrowths or dysbiosis or things? Why, right? Like, why did that happen? And why is your body responding?
Yeah. Like what's going on with stomach acid? Why do you have these bacterial infections? Is there low stomach acid and things like that? And why is that?
Because even that's the thing. It's like even SIBO, not a root cause. Low stomach acid, not a root cause. It's like, why is that? High stress, right? I mean, obviously it decreases when we age, but like high stress is one of the first things that depletes your stomach acid, right? And then stomach acid, I always say digestion is really like a top down, starting actually in the brain, right? We have to put ourselves in parasympathetic activation, rest and digest, right? Then it moves to the mouth. We have to actually chew our food to mechanically break it down, and our saliva will chemically start to break it down.
And the mindful eating piece, people are chewing twice.
Right. And you're driving and you're on your phone and you're watching TV, right? So we have to limit distraction. So your brain knows that it's eating. It's really asking, am I safe to digest this food, right? It's rest and digest. And if you're in fight or flight, guess what? Like, your body's not even thinking about that. I mean, we're so primitive. If you were running from a lion, would your body be worrying about like digesting your lunch? No, it's sending blood flow to your limbs.
Exactly.
So run. So
away from your digestive
right,
organs.
Away from it. So people wonder why, they eat a meal and they feel bloated or they feel gassy. And so, like the stomach acid is like, third down that we're getting to. So we have to look at that. And then, why is that? And then thyroid plays a role in like motility as well. Huge role. And liver in terms of like, are you secreting bile acids? Like all of those things. So again, it's kind of like a web, like of an ecosystem that your body is just kind of trying to interpret.
I always say all roads lead to the gut, right? So like you talked about the axes, I think it's helpful. The gut is called the second brain, right? It's so connected to that, the mindset, the stressors, all of those things. And then also in terms of like all the other axes, like you're talking about, there's the gut liver axis. And so if there's something going on at the level of the gut, that also is sending signals to the rest of the body about how to act too.
Yeah, your gut has its own nervous system called the enteric nervous system, right? So it is actually sending signals. But I really always like to bring it back to like there's a million different bidirectional axes, right? But the one commonality is you. So we literally have to think about, again, what are all of the inputs that we're giving to that thermostat, right? Like, and why is it responding the way that it is? Because I mean, the gut is directly sending messages to the brain. The brain is directly sending messages to the gut. Again, the liver, all that stuff is connected. It's kind of like, I mean, when I had my kids and I carried them to term, and I remember thinking like all of and God, there was like, I don't know if you remember, it might've been before, but the Body Worlds exhibit. Did you ever see that or remember
I
that?
did in New York.
Yeah. So I remember seeing like every stage in the tube from like the baby to like, here's before, it's like this wild that this thing pops out and it's like, all of those things had to go right? There's a million things that could have gone wrong.
And they happen without you knowing it.
And they happen without you knowing it, right. So the same thing with your body, like you don't need to know. It can be very overwhelming, every little thing that's going on. But you do have to understand that if there's a break in the system, in the communication, it's not, we have to figure out why and where that's coming from, because that's causing your symptom or your dysfunction. And so we have to figure out like the why. And so, the all of the connections, it can be one way or the other. And it's never usually just one thing.
Oh, never.
Yeah.
It literally is never one thing. It's just upstream medicine is like we go to the root and like go from there. And then actually like it can be kind of simple because then everything else kind of chills itself out when you do some pretty basic things. Like stuff that we talk about with clients is so basic that people are like, really?
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And the way I like to look at it, because I think there is, to me, one of the issues right now in the functional space, and I think this is, again, one of those trends, right? Like low fat, and so, is that now functional medicine is becoming so popularized that I see a lot of practitioners in the online space. And again, this is no shade at anybody because everybody runs their business different. But it's like $3,000 worth of labs to like get in the door, right? Like let's test everything. When to me, if I hear your history, take a look at your lifestyle, what you're eating or not eating, how you're moving or not moving, how you're sleeping or not sleeping, what your stress levels are. There's not one person that there's not at least a list of 5 things that we can work on, at least, that take time to actually, that's the other thing. It's not like eat a salad for a week, like, right? It takes time. Yeah. So in my mind, I would rather do the things that we all need to do, right? Eat enough,
the simple
balance
stuff.
Our blood sugar, worry about not just macronutrients, but micronutrients, right? Sleep, manage our stress, move our bodies, not outseed our recovery. I would rather do that, see what symptoms resolve and what we're left over with. And then we might need, specialty testing does come into play, right? We may need to look at those things, especially, from coming from myself and having, SIBO and H. pylori. Some things do require treatment, but I'd rather say, what can we, again, just like that patient of mine, like I wish I had known to take care of myself and what could have prevented something. So it's like, what can we eradicate symptom-wise simply with the basics, the foundational stuff? And then let's see what we're left over with. And then we can go test and say, okay, what's going on now?
Yeah. And no, that's what I always talk about. And I like to be as cost effective as possible too, because also I'm trying to make functional medicine can be wildly expensive and not approachable, and that's not fair because we all deserve to. Functional medicine should just be medicine, right? Like you call it whatever you want. Like this is how this should be. Just like, hey, take in what should come in and take out what should come out, kind of thing. I always say that, like the basics, it's the foundations. But honestly, this is why fiber doesn't get the airtime that it's supposed to, because people think it's boring. It goes in one ear and out the other. If we're talking about sleep and we're talking about eat your vegetables and stuff like that, like we say that till we're blue in the face, and we will continue to, because it's the stuff that works.
Yeah. And
like
that's
at the
why
end
I like
of the
to
day.
explain the why, right? To me, I'm somebody, if I know why and it makes sense, right, then I'll do it. And so I always, with my clients, I'm explaining and educating as the why, because otherwise, and then it's like, oh, now I have a reason to do that, right? Like, scrolling on your phone, you think it's stress relief. I'll tell you that it's actually impeding your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep, which impacts your hunger cravings, right? Your weight, and your, even immunity, all those things. And it's like, oh, okay, now I got it, So I do think it's important. And I do think that functional, my mentor, Erin Holt, she always said, functional nutritionist, she's like, says that Western medicine was like, we got away from that because it was like a pill for every ill. But all of a sudden, functional medicine is becoming like a supplement for every lab finding. Yeah. Right? And I think there's all these popular...
greenwashing, they're calling it, right?
Yeah. There's all of these very popular, even like, is it functional med? Like, what is the thing with the labs?
Oh,
like functional health.
Functional
health. Which again, and I don't know how they practice, but like, I need to know someone's story. I'm not just, you're a human, not a lab marker, right? Yeah. Like, we need to know the why behind that. I don't necessarily, like, I could probably tell you based on your lifestyle, like what your labs are going to look like. So it's like, why don't we clean that stuff up and then retest your labs and see how your body responded. And then like, do we need some supports along the way? But I do think it's important because, you know, just like we were kind of to pull the conversation back with like the mind and the body and all of that stuff, it's still not just, you know, the thoughts are so important. And, you know, with the gut stuff, like we talked about, we could go a whole conversation with leaky gut and intestinal permeability, and yeah, that has to do like, are you consuming processed foods? Are you consuming alcohol? But like, do you have no boundaries,
too,
right?
yeah.
Stress will break down your tissues, right? And so, and also like I'm a big energy person. So if we're lacking boundaries, like think about your intestinal walls like a boundary, right? So it's like, if things are leaking, it's like, where are our boundaries leaking in our life? Like, where are we people pleasing? Where are we taking on more than we can handle? I mean, it's like, we can't consider physical health without like the mental energy body as well.
That's arguably like the hardest thing. For me, that's the hardest piece of all, because it's like, I'm so passionate about all these things that I just want to keep adding more onto the plate. Yeah. And it's like, no, the plate can't change size. Like you have to take some things off and add some things on. I don't know. For me, that's the hardest part.
Yeah. And that's the biggest amount of work that I feel like I do with my clients. I don't think they ever come in expecting to be working on like journaling and, you know, processing emotion. And not that it's like a therapy session, but like, it's so important to me because it was such a key point in my health. Like even with when my sister was ill, that's really when I got into spirituality, and like, I knew I needed to take care of myself, and I knew I needed to journal some things and get into feelings, because it will manifest in your body. And so to me, that's a huge component of what I do, because like a lot of women, like type A, we're overachievers. We're like, we want to do, like, we are the person, if, you know, your boss throws something at you at work, like, yeah, I'll get it done. At home, it's like, I'll get it done. And it's like, but just because you can do it all, like, you shouldn't do it all. You don't have to do it all. And your body is also listening to that too. So we do have to make sure we're taking care of that piece and not always trying to do, because, and coming at our body with like constant fix it energy, that is also a stressor, right? Your body will be like, will realize that, because again, it does have the ability to heal. It's trying to work for you. And if we're constantly like, you know, slapping on the wrist like a kid that was bad, it's not going to want to respond to you.
No, and and then you're muscling your way to get somewhere that you could get a lot faster in a much, you know, more enjoyable way. And you and I both talk to our clients so much about the longevity of it. Like it's got to be sustainable. The satiation piece that you were talking about is like, well, you have to also like the foods that are coming in too.
1,000%.
So I mean, I'm huge, and I definitely talk about like, how can we like throw some more greens in there or something like that, and it's not going to change the flavor, right? Like there are a lot of ways that you can like throw some extra micronutrients in there and still be eating what you love, and it's kind of like the yes and approach. Yeah. But with the whole like self and the spirituality and the community piece, like I do think at the end of the day, it's you and it's I and it's me, and then it's you zoom out into the we, and that's, I think, what takes the stress out of it the most for me personally, is being like, okay, I am a part of something a lot bigger. Like, the world does not revolve around me. I am a part of something bigger. And that, I think, takes the stress and anxiety out of like having to have everything figured out too. Yeah. And that, as you know, and being involved in a community is great for health, and a lot, like there are studies on that being helpful, volunteering, eudaimonic well-being, all these things about you just having good relationships with other people. And it does start with yourself, too. It does. And I also think you have to audit, and this is something I talk about with people, again, in that umbrella of stress of like the mental, emotional, perceived. You do have to audit your relationships, because it's like, where do you have relationships that aren't serving you, right? And some you maybe can't get rid of, right? But like, do you have a friend that's one of those life sucker, Debbie Downer friends that calls you and will go on for 30 minutes and you can feel yourself boil, right? Like, we have to have boundaries around those conversations. You know, even if you have a family member that maybe oversteps their boundaries and that stresses you out, you have to put up a boundary. You can't get rid of them, they're your family. But social media, like, who are we consuming? Like, we are now outsourcing our mental wellness to people that we're scrolling and we're comparing, we're doing all these things. So community is great if it's the right community, but I do think that everybody needs to like also consider auditing their relationships, both in person and virtual, right? Because if somebody's making you feel less than, if somebody's making you constantly compare, feel like you'll never add up, right? You know, those sort of things, like, they don't necessarily deserve 20 minutes of you looking at them at 11 o'clock at night, right? Or just
first thing
unfollow.
In the morning, right? First thing in the morning when your brain is so susceptible. So community is important as long as it's like the right community for you.
Yeah, I meant more like actually out in living life.
Living life.
Not necessarily from like Instagram sort of communities of like, hey, go out and hang out with people. Right. You know what I mean? Or like hang out with your family. And but also I like that too. If maybe something served you for a period of time, and it's also the auditing piece is like the awareness piece, which is huge, of maybe that did serve me for a period of time and maybe now it's not serving me. Right. You know, and recognizing that and being. And are they
supportive of your goals? I think as women, especially when we're trying to better ourselves and like work towards our health goals, I would hope that everyone around us would be helpful and supportive of that. But if somebody isn't, then again, that might be a place where you have to, maybe it's not somebody you spend as much time with, because if it revolved, the relationship revolved around, alcohol or unhealthy eating or those sort of things, like we have to be okay. I think so many women are so apologetic about trying to better themselves, right? And we kind of keep ourselves back with the group, right? Because that is part of our nature too for survival, is like being accepted, right? And being loved. Yeah. So I think it is really important to surround yourself with those who are where you're wanting to go, right? Yeah. And maybe not necessarily where you've been that you're trying to, level up from too.
And once you start to pay attention to the energy, then it's like, it's very easy to tell, is this energy giving or is this energy depleting? And then it's just, having to act on it.
Yeah.
Which can be hard. I mean, all of this stuff we're saying, like, we are saying that this is somewhat simplistic and like simple. And we know that we're saying it takes time to implement, to recognize, like, it all, with all of the things that we're talking about, it all comes back to awareness of like your own situation. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And knowing that it's going to take time to get there. You and I talk about that all the time in terms of people wanting such quick results. And if you just work on, some very simple basic things, but really stick with it, and in a sustainable way, things that you enjoy doing, like a morning journaling with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, that's enjoyable, and that's doable. Or if it's not doable in the morning, try other times of the day. Like everything, I'm always like, try this on for size, see how it goes for you, and then maybe you iterate, and maybe that doesn't work for you, and then you throw that out, but you tried.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It is, and I think, like, allowing yourself to evolve and be human. And to me, I think the best thing anyone can do, whether it's working on a weight loss goal or health goal, is remove the timeline, right? There's no end, like, finish line. There's no end game. To me, we're human and we're changing, and our environment's changing. And it's like, just every day, like, do the best that you can with the circumstances that you have. That's always what I say. Like, we're not going to be able to do it all, but I always say, do the best that you can with the circumstances that you have. Like, not every day is going to be perfect, but there's always something you can do. And that's, like you said, where the empowerment piece comes in. It's like, when you know how impactful even such small things can be, it's like, it can really change your life, like one habit at a time.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like, okay, I know today is going to be a wildly crazy day, so I'm not going to add that extra thing, or I'm not going to, sometimes it's really taking away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then it's not always just about adding on too.
Yeah. I always say, even for stress management, like, little things I do is like, not pick up my phone when I'm in a waiting room somewhere. Constantly. I'm like, we think about it doing more, but it's like, what can we do less of? Like, when can we actually create some white space in our day? And it's not always about I do breath work in the car everywhere I go. It's not about like setting aside 20 minutes to like simply do that, but it's like, do it, like, habit stack, like, do it with other things that you already are doing. I really, it just, the behavior change is the biggest piece. And to me, that's where coaching comes in, right? It's like, because it's not just knowing what you need to do. It's like actually implementing what you know, and making sure it's the right stuff. But having the behavior change is the hardest part. The identity change is the hardest part. And to me, that is my favorite part of what I do with people, because it's like, you and I, we're working with people that like really want to work on their health, right? And it's like, I know so I just want you to get the most out of your efforts. And I know how daunting that can be if we don't actually change, like you said, the internal structure, the internal language, the identity, and the actual behaviors that kind of got you where you were in the first place. So
I'm always like, let's just be curious. Like, something that comes up, you're like, noted. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes.
And that's almost like you with the scale of being, let's not assess like a positive or negative to that.
Yeah, what's it responding to? Right.
Let's see if that happens again.
Yeah.
And then you can figure out patterns and all those things. But I think it is just hard in the world that we live in to be able, because the world is continuing to kind of take us out of ourselves. And so now it's like we're telling everyone to kind of like tap back into yourself. That is the way. And it takes time. And the only way to know that is to do it, and do it for yourself and prove it to yourself. And you will feel differently. We're both living proof of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And know that I made a million mistakes along the way, right? And I think that's the other thing, is we're so hard on ourselves when we like make a mistake. And I'm like, in my world, I always say it's not failure, it's feedback. So whenever if you think you failed at something, it's like, just take, what can I learn from it? And how can I use what I learned to redirect, like course correct, make different behaviors or choices in the future. And that's what it's all about. It's not about not doing everything right. It's a matter of just like taking what your lessons you're learning on a day-to-day basis and like kind of slowly wiggling your way where you want to go.
Yeah. I look back at who I used to be, and I give myself grace for that, and I'm not mad at it because I did the best with what I had at that moment, you know, and then now I know better and I can do better.
Yeah, and you can help other people from it. That's how if I didn't go through any of the things that I went through, I wouldn't have the voice that I do, like to help people in the way that I do. And there are certain people that need that medicine. There's exact people that need your medicine, and everybody else, you know. And it's like that lived experience is a huge component. And that's why I always say with my clients too, it's like your lived experience matters. That's why I said it's not just about like a lab or a symptom or a diagnosis. It's like, what's your lived experience? Because that does play a role, and it's actually probably to me like one of the most important roles, because it's going to shape even how we go about, you know, approaching your nutrition or your movement or whatever else before, because we all come with those, you know, the
mindset, the mental reframe, all those sorts of things.
All of those things. Yeah.
Well, we could talk forever.
Forever. I know.
We'll have to do this again.
I know, for sure. I know.
But thank you for being here. And can you just tell everyone where to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at It's Christina McClurken. There's an underscore between those. That's usually the best way. I am also on Facebook. But that's the best way to find me. And I'm always up for a good conversation.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You're an incredible coach, and you help so many women. So we're grateful to have you, and I'm grateful to have you as a peer.
Yes, me too. I'm so happy our world's connected.
Yay. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.